the church. Okay, but you are the church and you are the stewards of God's mission. And that's true for every church. Every church is the steward of God's mission in the world. And, Grace is in an interesting time in its life cycle as a church where our mission isn't quite clear yet, okay? Part of that is due to all sorts of things, of course, of which, you have COVID, you have pastoral transitions. Like, we understand why we're here. This is not a blame, shame kind of thing. It's just that we are figuring out who it is that God is calling us to be next, right? That is our challenge. That is our invitation. And because you are the church, you need to know some things in order to know where to go next. Because here's the thing that I learned pretty early on. And some of you already know this with the work that you do in your lives. Information is nothing more than knowledge, and knowledge is nothing more than power, and power is nothing more than what we are capable of doing. And in this case, what we're capable of doing as it relates to the mission of God, okay? So, information is important because it's power and it gives us agency. But we can't have good agency unless we have information. So today's Town Hall Forum is all about that. I'm going to toss the baton over here to Ray in just a second. And he's going to lead that conversation about where we are financially, okay? Now, but I want us to really work hard, friends. Budget does not equal church, okay? Budget and monies is always meant to support the mission of God's work we do in our communities, in our world, okay? So even though we're going to be throwing a lot of numbers before you, and you're going to have handouts you get to take home, so look over and pray over. We're going to inundate you with lots of numbers, and some of you or most of you may just feel overwhelmed at the end of this with all the numbers, but don't worry about it, because at the end of the day, we as leadership, as finance team, we're trying to be faithful, and the only way we can be faithful is if we're transparent with you about where things are at in this church. So, don't get too bogged down with all of these numbers. Just understand we're giving information so that we as a church can start to move forward with some agency. So, with that, Ray, will you wave your hand? This guy here. He is now our new board chair. Joel has faithfully served in that position for 3 years, and he has transitioned off that position. And now Ray has the honor and privilege of taking the helm in that sense. And it's been a short time since January 1, but I can already tell you, friends, he is the right man that God has called for this time in this place. So
Flattery will get you nowhere.
All right, Ray, take it over.
Okay, there's actually 7 sets. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
There's actually about 7 sets of handouts which are going to accompany this proceedings, if you will. And Doris and Mr. Timmerman are going to pass them out one set at a time, so not everyone's looking at all 7 sets while we're trying to talk about one. The first one we're going to talk about is kind of that pink elephant in the room. We talk about monies and what we are, what we have, what we don't have. The question is going to come up, so I think Pastor Mann and I decided the best thing to do is just to get it out in the open right away. And that was the land sale, the proceeds, and the distribution of the monies that came from all that. Now, you have pass-outs here. If you don't have a copy, look at your neighbors or whatever. But just to start, we sold the land for $803,000, where that building is. It paid off the mortgage that we had at Sterling Bank, $741,000. So, along with that came fees and taxes, state fees, signing tax, all kinds of different taxes that are involved with that. And once that was all done, we ended up having $43,000 in change left. So the common question is, well, we can't be in too much of a financial bind because we got that. Well, that's all very nice and true, but then capital expenditures come along, which are important, and as you see on the sheet, We replaced windows, we got a new shed, computer and internet updates, all building related maintenance only, left us with just under $13,000 total from that $803,000 that we got. That's where that came in. So no, the land sale is passed. That took care of a past issue. How much was the mortgage we paid every month, Doris?
It was a little bit over 5,000.
Yeah, so that eliminated all of that. All interest and principal are gone. That's taken care of.
And the other note about this sheet too, just to build on what Ray is saying, to make clear again, transparency, when churches sell property, land, building, whatever, any kind of proceeds have to, per the Book of Discipline of the United Methodist Church, can only go towards capital improvements, right? It can't be used for ministry stuff. It would have to be reinvested in capital stuff. So that's why when Ray pointed out $43,000, some of you might be here thinking, well, why don't we get a new youth minister? Why don't we, get a new children's minister? It's because that money, per the Book of Discipline, could not be used for those things. It could only be used for investing in capital expenditures, as I said. So I want that to be fully clear on the table.
What was the question, Doris? What was $5,000?
The whole mortgage payment?
Per
Per
month.
month.
Per month
Per
was
month.
about
Yeah.
$5,000.
5,000 change. Doris is our finance guru, so she knows numbers better than anybody else. Kara is also on the finance committee, and James. So they worked collectively together to get these numbers in some fashion that makes sense and real. They're real numbers, they're transparent numbers. So I guess the next thing that's interesting to figure out is we have a current projected budget deficit of around $31,000. And that's present. Now, the role of this church and the finance group, the leadership, is to make sure that we don't have budget deficits every year. We have them. And the question now is, present, past is done over there, present, what are we gonna do about taking care of this budget? What are ideas, what can we do? What are the factors behind all of it? One data point is that we need to increase our income options, and another one is to decrease our expenses. That's a marriage that's tough to do. You can't just, say, I now pronounce you income and no deficit. It doesn't work that way. So we have to get some creativity going. What we did, as a group and as a board, is we came up with some options for income. They were just our ideas. These aren't the only ideas that are out there. There's a lot of collective minds in here with a lot of intelligence. And ideas, I'm sure, will be very fresh in your people's minds. And that's what we're kind of counting on, is to look at the kinds of things we picked out as possibilities to do to increase our incomes and decrease our expenses. But that's just our ideas. This is not us telling you what to do or how to do it. We need you 30 or 40 or 50 people in here to come up with something creative that says, okay, how about this? Did we consider that? Could we do this? Could we do that? And that's why this whole situation is like a 2-week, it's a 2-part meeting. This week, we're merely giving you the numbers, we're giving you the data, we're giving you the upfront situations for you to set on for the rest of this week, today, tomorrow. You can watch football. And the plan is next Sunday, after service, we'd like to get together again, a shorter meeting, but we'd like to have you bring along the sheet that has that nice blank on the bottom. You can put up together 1, 2, 3, 5 ideas in your mind, discussing with your own family what we could do to augment some of the things that we also have on here. We might be able to come up with some solutions that going forward make sense. The deficit's not gonna go away unless we do something about it. It's just not gonna go.
And the more options we have available to us, which again, employ the body of Christ to be prayerful about this, because as you see at the top of this handout, no matter what we choose at this point, whether it's to increase our income solution or a solution to decrease our expenses, it's going to require sacrifice and creativity on our part to tackle this deficit. But we also need the more ideas that can be pooled together, and creative ideas and prayerful ideas, is we have to identify then strategically as a body which one will, the energy that needs to go into that solution will have the greatest impact on this deficit number. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if somebody here is sitting here and says, I have $32,000 that I'm sitting on, and here you go, wow, God bless you. I don't think that's the case, though. So we need some other ideas.
So that's the whole idea. We have past, again, and present now, and down the line we're going to talk about future as far as how we can prohibit these types of things from happening in the future. That's going to be Amanda's, that's her thing to talk about later.
We're handing up the next four.
Yeah. The next, actually set of three you're getting look very busy. But what they do is track our history from 2018 through 2022 and into 2023. Talking about our income, actual numbers, our expenses, actual numbers, the differences between the two, and it's sort of an overview of what the numbers are over about a 5 or 6 year span of time, how we changed every year. So it's for you to see that this isn't just a 1 year situation. There have been all kinds of ups and downs over the last 5 years. And we're trying to get a handle on that situation. So look at it. Yeah. Like I said, and like Pastor Amanda said, there's going to be a lot of numbers here.
By the way, this one that I'm handing out, this is the actual, for those number people out there, this is going to give you the full budget for 2023 as we have projected it. And then also next to the projected 2023 budget is 2022's budget of what we budgeted and where we landed actually. So, but this is for those number folks out there who absolutely want to see where is the money allocated, where is it going. We're trying to be transparent, okay? So that's what this sheet does.
And actually, whether or not you want to see the numbers is really irrelevant. We owe you the numbers.
Well, exactly. We owe you numbers.
We're not going to sit on numbers and say, we have numbers here. You got to guess what they are. You need to know what they are, like it or not like it. Interested or not interested. I mean, that's just a fact of Grace life today.
We might not have enough handouts, so if family units can share, that would be great. So if you're here with a husband or a wife or a partner, can you share? Thank you.
And actually, of these three that were just passed out, the first sheet summarizes all three. I mean, it's all on one page. So don't confuse yourself and say, I gotta read all 3 pages and see what's what. It's all there. And again, it's meant to show you how our income changed year to year, how our expense changed from year to year. There will be questions, I'm sure, about that.
Do you want me to quickly?
Yeah,
Okay.
please do.
So I'm gonna explain a little bit more of these graphs because I'm a visual person. Numbers are hard for me. Like if I was to just be handed lots of numbers, which the finance team is so good at analyzing and doing, that's hard for me. So what I did was I tried to put it in graphs and pictures because that helps me too. And maybe it'll help you. But the graph piece is a little, I still need to translate this for you a little bit. So if you take out the one that has income versus expense variance on it, okay, this is more of that 3D one. So what this is showing you, we decided to give you guys a 5-year picture, right? Because it tells a story. This tells a story. And here's the story it tells. In 2018, now that bar graph that's way up there in the positive, that is a deceiving thing unless you're actually paying attention to what that's saying. And here's what it's actually saying. In 2018, this church budgeted what's the word? A surplus, thank you. A surplus of quite a considerable amount, almost $30,000 surplus, okay? But what ended up actually happening, like that was the projected budget, like woohoo, we're going into 2018, things are good. But 2018 landed $5,000 in the hole, which means there was a huge variance of what was going on in 2018, which tells the story this church was struggling already, right? Like that's a big struggle. Even though it looks like it's positive, it's not. Okay, now here's what happened. 2019 happened. 2018, this church went through the process of selling that land, and you sold it. Woohoo! 2019, paid off the mortgage, and this is why the year 2019 now, the actual was you guys did have a surplus in 2019, and that's why. Okay? See, this tells a story. But then, notice what happened after 2019. Pandemic, yep. And you get a pretty significant deficit. You ended with a pretty significant deficit on that year. And then in 2021, not as stark of a deficit, but a deficit. And then in 2022 was probably the best year we've had. It's still a deficit though, okay? I want you to hear that. We have yet really, other than 2019, but that was because of a very significant event, to land in a non-deficit budget, okay? Now, in 2023, you can see on here that this is the largest deficit budget, projected budget, that we have had ever, I believe. Ever, okay? So that's telling a story, which means, Grace Church, we are at a critical transition point. We have some choices to make, right? We have some discerning to do.
If I might interrupt,
Yep, go for it.
in case you're all wondering, is Grace the only church that's in this situation?
No.
Don't kid yourself.
No, don't kid
The
yourself.
majority are in some situation like this, or worse, maybe a little better, but they're not really talking about it that much. So we're not alone.
Right. But we want this leadership team, you guys, I'm so incredibly honored to serve with them and to now serve with you, because the willingness to own what is and be real about it and transparent actually means then we can move somewhere from here. Because if we're in denial of this, or if we're in a skewed understanding of it, our ability to actually have agency to move forward, to go beyond this, is greatly diminished, right? So churches who aren't talking about this, I hope we're in the positive, because we are, okay? We're in the positive. So thank you to this leadership.
Yeah, knowledge is power, but if you don't have the knowledge,
Right,
you don't know what you're dealing with.
right.
And my job is not to create the numbers. That's the team, Doris and crew, who are the number gurus. They do that. They give you these numbers, and they're always right. I mean, they are right. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. You have some incredible finance folks here. And by the way, they're the only ones to our knowledge, and Doris has been doing this for like 40 years. Okay, whatever. I'm rounding up. 40.
She gave it to me for a while.
Right.
She didn't come back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Confused about something.
Yeah.
So I can follow, income versus expenses, actual budget. The second
What are
one
you
down.
looking- what are you looking
It's
at?
the third one, so expense, so that's, what's that about?
Which page are you
Which-
looking at?
I'm looking at the charts here.
Oh, that one?
Yeah, I'm not clear. It's,
Oh, okay, so you're in expense.
is that part, what?
Well, expenses are part of like, when Doris sits down and says, okay, what are all the things that we as a church have budgeted for with utilities, with staffing, with ministries that needed money, right? Those are all expenses.
Right.
Okay, and when we sit down to set a budget, right, for the year, we're basing that on, okay, we think, to the best of our ability, with all of this knowledge of the past years, we know that heating is usually going to be around here, cooling is usually going to be around here, we know the Sunday school usually spends this much money, so setting that projected budget, right? And that's what we as a church vote on that and say, okay, we agree with you that this is the budget we're gonna operate under. These numbers then, Mary, reflect that there's variance in what is actual, how we actually landed with our expenses each year versus what we actually budgeted for. Does that make sense? And that makes up, by the way, that then makes up this bar graph up here is all of those discrepancies between income and expenses.
And that's why we do 5 years worth of this sort of thing.
Right.
Doing 1 year is really ridiculous. It's misleading and it's not clear. 5 years gives you the trend.
I do have a question, so from 2018 to 2019, you'd expect like a $60,000 decrease in expenses, right? No mortgage payments anymore, 5,000 a month, something like that.
Right.
Something ate up like 45,000 of that in budgeted expenses. Do we know roughly about that?
Doris, can you speak to
That's a
that?
good question. I wasn't here.
Back in 2018, 2019, I can with some research, but I
Oh.
can't right
Okay,
off
and
the
I
top of my
don't mean
head.
to put you on the spot, I'm just kind of wondering, at some point, that elimination of mortgage should benefit us somehow.
Well,
We're probably
that,
not at 18,
that's
19.
the common thought, but.
We are a smaller church for numbers and
Budget.
in terms
So
of
less-
families.
Less
yes,
income
there
coming in,
is less
but
income.
a lot of the expenses stay the same, yeah. You
Yeah,
still have to
a
be.
lot of our expenses stayed the same. We are a smaller church than we were 5 years ago.
And maybe that explains.
And that's the difference.
But it
Yes.
wouldn't explain the expense,
No.
that would explain the income.
That would explain.
Did that get handed over?
Okay, I was just kind of curious.
What month of the year did you pay off?
Okay.
So the payments done?
Was it May?
May. Okay, so it wasn't a whole year we didn't help.
No,
Right.
it was
Yeah.
half a year.
2019 was half a year, that explains part.
That was in May of 2019.
And so
Approximately half a year.
that was $30,000 still spent on mortgage payments.
Right.
Now, there's another
That's a good point.
factor involved in all of this, and James has been the person who's been able to document some of this, and you should have that pass out as well, or not?
Yeah. It's all right. So, by the way, the other two are just for those of you who want to really take this home. Excuse me. These other two bar graphs. This just shows you to break it down, like just if we're looking at just income. This shows you the discrepancy in what was budgeted and what we actually landed on, right? And then expense is the same thing. Take that home and look at it. We're not going to really go over that. This is the one we really wanted you to see, though, and explain this one. So,
James,
Extra credit.
is that?
yeah, you should have
Did
it.
you pass that one out?
Yeah, the giving units. You should have it on your table. You know what? I need to borrow this. Excuse me.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, okay, this one right here, giving units.
James, you want to explain that a little bit to us?
Yeah, this is the only number you really. I mean, you can try to understand the other stuff. Basically, very hard. Sorry.
James, you want to explain that particular?
Now, these are not just budget.
Here, James, why don't you stand up? Turn around. Okay.
These are all giving units, not just strictly pledged giving units. Okay, in 2019, we had 110. Now, at the end of 22, we have 83. And of course, some of that didn't return after the pandemic, but also because of the issues within our denomination. We lost several families, especially one of the very largest giving unit that we
The
have.
dropouts.
Yeah.
Dropouts.
So what this is reflecting, this graph, is that, again, it's telling a consistent story, right? We are on a decreasing trend line. And we're not here to talk about the whys. That's a rabbit hole that will lead us into a black hole. There's lots of reasons, okay, for why we're here. But we need to just know where we are, where the here is, and now we can focus on now what, right? So, but we have lost quite a few membership through death, through moving away, through people who are saying this denominational stuff, I just don't want to be a part of it, so they've left the church because of that. So, and people just not returning because of the pandemic, so
Very expensive collateral damage is
Yeah.
what it wants to.
yeah. And the other thing on this paper, again, we're not the only church, okay? We're not the only church for whom this data point is also the same. But as you can see, we have 6 pledging, that's not the non-pledging ones, just the pledging ones that we know of. 6 of them account for 33% of all of the pledged income, which means, here's what this means. It takes 2 or 3 deaths, folks, of these people, and it's gonna make a significant dent in our income. So, again, all churches operate this way, even the mega churches. Just, they operate it on a larger scale. For whatever reason, there's a very small margin of people at the top who give the majority of the budget. Churches have to keep struggling with that one, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a fact, and you're gonna see that anywhere. There's always gonna be that high echelon.
Yeah.
We've got pockets.
But isn't that's not the predominant source of income, really, is it? I mean,
It's 33%.
Yeah, she said
Yeah.
33%.
33%.
6
I
people.
was thinking of MTR, they talk
Yeah,
about-
just 6 people are giving over a third of our budget. That's just, it's information, okay? And then the other data point on this, I was able to work with Linda to put together an average. This is average now, not means, or the mean or the median. This is the average of all of worship attendance for 2019, which was pre-pandemic, right? And then 2022, which was post-pandemic. And as you can see, 74 in 2019 is the average worship attendance. That includes the 8 a.m. service for half of that year too, by the way. So, and then in 2022, we are now down to an average of 50.
So
Data points.
A
These
lot
are
of,
just
a
data
lot of
points.
declining numbers on any way you want to look at it. And basically, we don't care. Why? The issue is, what do we do about it? I mean, people are going to leave, they're going to leave. People aren't going to show up. It's a free world, they're not going to show up. You can't put a leash on them and drag them in. It's not going to work that way. Well, you could, I suppose, but so again, I'm going to just kind of cut my size down here. You have 2 sheets that were the income options and the expense options. And on the bottom of each one of those is a space for Kara and for Marty, and whoever, and Ed, to write something in, come up with an idea that you think would be different than, or better than, or associated with those items that are already on these sheets.
I want to point out an encouraging item up here, under total giving units. That last year was 84, this year it's 83. I see that as a stability that's lining off. I mean, it's low, but it doesn't show a tapering effect.
And here again, that's why we do the 4 and 5 year type comparisons, so we can see that there are trends, either positive or negative.
And things that go down, sometimes go back up again.
Right. So giving 1 year data doesn't give you any information. Giving you 3, 4, 5 year data in a row so you see it gives you information of, okay, this is what's going on here. It's what's been going on. And my only charge now as the head of the board is just to make sure you folks do this income and expense ideas sheets, 2 sheets. Study the numbers you have that you're taking home with you. Look at them. Don't get a headache over them. But use your creativity to come up with something that we could use together as a group. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. Forget about why it happened. That's done.
Right now, go ahead.
Can I say something? I know because I was passing out a lot of these things that not everybody got everything. So if you didn't get all the sheets, can I see your hand so we can go make copies? So you have the information to take home with you, and also, especially this copy, so you can bring information back to us. So 2, 3, 4.
Over there.
So if I make, say, 10 copies and lay them up there, you can grab them on the way
Yeah,
out.
4 hands over there. So that's really my part of this entire situation is the awareness, the transparency. What happened? Don't care why. What happened? What we could possibly do about it, and giving your input as to how you can help. It's your church. commit to some of the things that we need to do. And the rest I'm gonna give to Amanda.
Thank you, Ray. I mean, I tease Ray all the time because he's like, this is your church. Yes, it's your church. Actually, let's be clear about something. This is God's church, okay? We're here as people of faith, right? We're not just another nonprofit. We are people who are followers of Jesus. And that makes a difference because here, in talking about this, right? I mean, what does Jesus care about a $31,000 deficit? Right. It can get a little weird talking about it that way. But here's what I will say. We are called to be stewards of God's mission, right? And how we do that is reflected in how we manage and care for our church budget, and how that church budget then pushes the mission of what we're doing forward, right? But like I said in the beginning though, I understand, having been here for about 1.5 years now, Grace is at a very critical point where we don't have a rudder. We're kind of floating rudderless in the ocean. There isn't clarity about what our mission is, right? So this conversation really is to point out, yes, we have a present challenge and it's an immediate need that we have to solve. It's a solution-oriented, like short term, we've got to come up with a solution now for this year to manage this, okay? But this, and even this, is all part of a much bigger umbrella, which is called, what is Grace's mission, right? Because we have to take these numbers seriously, but we also have to take God's call seriously. So what is God requiring of us as Grace Church in the present, going into the future? And that's where the future challenge lies, right? So it's multi-layered here. This is like a 2D thing. We have to address present challenge with a short-term solution, knowing full well that short-term solution isn't what we're going to do next year and the year after that. Like, we don't want to do that, right? That's not what we want to do. We don't want to live in this stress. None of us do. I mean, do you like to live in this stress in your own personal life? No, it's not fun. We want to live with purpose and meaning. And so our future challenge that we're going to be addressing this year, or hopefully we will, and the body here will say yes to this, is to work very intentionally into listening. Listening for what is the new mission for Grace in this community. Now, that sounds very ethereal and over here. What does that mean, Amanda? Okay. We had a retreat for the board yesterday, and we all gathered and we had a lovely time. But part of that retreat was Reverend Susan Nienaber from the conference.
Good soup.
Thank you. Yeah. Reverend Susan Nienaber from the conference came to give a presentation on a process that the conference has available to local churches like Grace who are exactly in our spot now, to help discern and address this, right? And they would bring in an outside consultant. I hate to use that word, spiritual consultant. I don't know any other way to say it. So that I can be free as your pastor to be your pastor. It would have been very hard for me to be the consultant hat and your pastor. So an outside person from the conference can come in to our church and help lead us into a very intentional, missional future. And to put flesh around that, right? Tangible, tactile things about our new identity for going forward. Because,
that's, to be clear,
Yes.
that's probably a year-long process.
Yes.
What's in the middle there is our current consideration.
Yes.
What's on the bottom and the possibility of doing that is really a vision for the future. So
Correct.
we've got these two things
Right.
that really need to coexist.
But here's the reason why I'm bringing this up.
No, it's fine. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
but the reason I'm bringing this up is because what Susan presented, and board, if you were here in that meeting, can you just quickly say a positive, or like what your thought was about what Susan presented, so it's not just me saying it?
She has,
I didn't-
I forget how many years experience, but she's under 60, so she's been doing this for a while. And she's been able to meet with many churches and groups of all sizes and learned along the way what to do as far as consulting with them and building with them. Learning along the way what doesn't work. You can't be doing it. You can't be selling things and, selling to the community. She just figured out ways of how to take a church and make it go the right direction.
Well, the thing I thought worked and would work for us is it wasn't a cookie cutter approach.
No.
Yeah.
It was looking at where we are, our community, the community we live in, the community we work in, and what are the possible answers that we can see. And so for different churches, the answers are different. And to me that says, yeah, this might be something, and in my mind is something that would be valuable for this church.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Mayor.
So we have another church that's using this building. How much of it, what are they paying? What are they paying? I'm just wondering.
They're a very small fraction of our income.
Are they?
In the larger scheme of things. So, but if we lose
That
Spirit of
is-
Truth, trust me, it's gonna make this hurt real bad. Like we're gonna feel it.
We need to keep them here.
So
What about, and this is something I heard you talk about, that churches were coming to the door of this building, church, and, like in multiples, there's other communities out there. I'm just, is that, I know I may be jumping the gun, but is that something that's viable and?
So I'm gonna invite you to write that down on that handout that we're sending you home with, and bring it back next Sunday when we regather at the same time after church to talk about viable options. But yeah, no, that's a good question. Spirit of Truth we have a license agreement with them, and they do give us monthly, that's an income source, okay?
It's on the income under building
Yeah, and if you
use
see
rent.
it, I can't think of it off the
It's
top of my
there.
head, but it's on the budget. So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm a member of Portland Avenue Church in Bloomington,
Ah,
and we went through this a few years ago.
you did.
Yes, and it was a very good outcome. It was wonderful, and they give the church a whole new mission
Yeah.
to work on.
Was it Susan? Or was it another consultant came in?
No, I wasn't, in the inner circle,
Okay.
so I don't know who it was that come in. But they went through a whole year's progress
Okay.
of figuring out things to do. And they become a haven for the community.
Yeah.
So that was the mission that came from that study that they did.
Well,
And
I'm
it
so glad
costs-
you're here today.
And it will cost us something.
Yes, and I'll get to that in a minute. Lori?
So I have two comments. The first about what Marty said about this present challenge of the $31,000 deficit. That's right now. We are not currently $31,000 overdrawn. This is how much we'll be short over the years, so we're roughly short $3,000 a month. So we need to raise like $10,000 quickly and come up with a solution. It's not like we have to get $31,000 a day.
Right, thank you for pointing that out.
And the second
Correct.
thing I was gonna ask is whether the
Thank you.
conference pays for this consultant or not, which apparently they don't.
Yes. Okay, did everybody hear Lori, what she said? Okay, good. Yes, do you wanna handle this one? Go for it. The cost.
I do not know the cost.
Oh, you don't remember that? Okay,
Well,
yeah, so if any of you have worked with consultants, you know they're very expensive.
Yes.
But here's what the conference is willing to, what they do for churches, not willing, what they do. They just ask for the church going through this process with the consultant to pay for the consultant's mileage, wherever they're coming from, and then $1,000. So basically, we're looking at anywhere between $1,200 to $1,400. I think the money is here in this church to pay for that. And yeah, so it's peanuts compared to what we would pay
Do
normally.
you have fundraisers?
We could.
You don't have any now?
See, this is another thing that we should all consider doing. We're not gonna solve this today. It's impossible. But the reason, again, I passed those out with space for you to put something in, a fundraising question, a fundraising option, a fundraising idea, that's what you put in there, bring it back, then we can discuss, yeah, let's talk about the fundraising thing. Because today, if we just keep throwing things at the wall, we'll be here till 4 o'clock,
Yeah,
and
it's not
we're
gonna be
ill
helpful.
prepared to do that, because you haven't really studied everything there is.
But if we remember what we did when we had to fix the roof,
Mhm.
and we raised a lot of money to fix the roof by doing a bunch of little fundraisers. So if people have even a small fundraiser in mind, that can help us raise $1,000 for the consultant.
So that's an idea that you can develop and work with and put in a form. How many, I don't wanna put you against the spot here, but how many people here won't be here next week? Can't be here? That's a very small number. So we're gonna see probably 90
Yeah.
to 95% of the people here that'll fill out that form, bring fresh ideas and develop ideas like yours and go forward.
Because to your point, Lori, very wisely put, you know, if we're looking at, yeah, if we can find a $10,000 margin to get us through until we can figure out how to cover the rest of the months, right? If it's, this breaks down into about $3,000 a month, right, in deficit. But for a church our size, that's significant, you guys. That's over half of what the mortgage payment was, okay? And the mortgage was already crippling this congregation. So, yes, it's doable when we break it down that way. And I want us to hold on to that hope in doing so. The other thing that I want us to remember too about the difference between these two layers that we're trying to address. The short term, we're operating from a place of we're having a hard time, we need to get over this hard time. Churches who get stuck in that model, and I know this church has a history of that, it's not a fun place. Your faith isn't fun anymore, right? It's not joyful. But the cool thing about missional discernment is that when churches become very clear where God wants them to go next, and it's not about us, it's a listening process that is all about God changing our hearts and saying, this is where you're going. But we have to listen for that. Here's the cool thing about how God works, friends. Miracles happen. Money follows mission. Mission doesn't follow money. Okay? I'll say that again. Money follows mission. Mission does not follow money. So if we focus and put a lot of energy into this too this year, which I'm hoping this group will agree to, then it's going to start addressing this problem right away. So that next year we're not living into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, is that, you know, we're dealing with two different things here. One is the short-term solution of filling the projected deficit for this year. The other is this idea of finding our mission. And when we have that new mission, what Susan has shared with us, just in the conversation we had yesterday, was that of the, well, she gave about 15 examples.
Yeah.
And of those 15, about 14 of the churches found a new mission. They were able to, you know, as an example, one church decided that there was a real need in their community with food insecurity, and so they went down that road, and having that mission attracted membership. And so a part of this too is looking at what is that mission, and then how are we helping those in our community with that mission? And then, as Amanda said, the funds will follow that mission. So we don't need to get more people in here to set our mission. We need to set our mission to get more
Correct.
people here.
Correct.
And that's what she found. That was the summation of what she's been doing, and it worked. It's about every place she went. So it's a proven.
And the reason we're bringing this up today, even though you're like, well, this is like a future, hold on. The board needs to vote yes to this process with the conference, and then the congregation has to vote to say yes, because it will involve the entire congregation, because the consultant will be interacting with the entire congregation. And so I'm so happy that half of those of you who are in worship are here right now. Like, this might be coming down the pipeline sooner rather than later, a vote to vote yes or no to this, okay? So that's why we're bringing it up.
So what is the outcome? Is it a list of actions? I mean, it needs to be not just ideas. of the consultation.
Oh, this, yes,
Yeah.
oh, absolutely, there's a whole series
Specific
that,
actions to
yes.
take and a plan.
Yeah.
And a timeline, okay.
I will go on record and say that if we decide to do this, I will donate $500 toward the cost of the consultant.
I will match it.
So,
We're there.
and James has matched it.
Lori doesn't like
What?
Lori doesn't, wait, oh. So basically, we've just raised the funds for this.
Wow.
Thank you, thank you, thank
The
you.
spirit's moving, this is
Go
amazing.
ahead and vote on it. We have the money.
Yeah, okay, we have the money, should we just vote on it? You know what, okay, yeah, how do we do this? It's an official vote. Huh? Well, who makes the motion? Somebody needs to make the motion. I can't.
I make the
We
motion
covered
To-
the minutes,
to
okay,
vote on
quiet
it.
for the
No.
What?
No, it's not to vote on it.
Make the motion to reach out to Susan Nienaber
Yes, that's it.
to pursue a consultant to come
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and guide us in missional work, missional
Yes,
revisioning.
that's my motion.
Okay.
Now, to be politically correct, we're supposed to have a quorum of the board. Do we
Oh,
have
that's
a-
true.
But
Do we have a quorum?
I've never followed rules that well. So,
Okay.
Well, I think we have a quorum,
No,
don't
we
we?
do. One, two, three.
Who's on the board, raise your hand.
Raise your hand if you're on the board.
well, then we do.
Oh, we have a quorum. We have a
We
quorum.
have a quorum.
Okay.
So, we can do this as a board, but it's all you folks are doing it too. I mean, you know, to
Yeah.
say, we authorize the church to spend this money with the understanding that there are some designated contributions to pay for it.
Right.
I second the motion.
Okay, Lori seconds the motion. Oh, and Bill seconds the motion. So all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes. Wow.
By a quorum of the
Still the.
Woo!
Of course. And say ideas we have.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, this is wow. Wow. This is good news.
It's our hope.
And speaking of which, we will end with this poem on hope. It's my prayer that's going to carry you out into now your Super Bowl opposition modes. But before I do that, I just need to inquire quickly. As you know, Sue Ann Turner has been wrestling with cancer and her health situation. Anyway, Sue Ann had been doing the PowerPoint for years and years and years for worship, right? And you know that we have the one screen in worship and PowerPoint that we use in order to do that. And when Sue Ann became ill, I took that on for 2 months. That was a lot of work for me to be doing that and worship and. And so it got me wondering about the process for that screen and PowerPoint in worship. So I guess my question to you is, how many of you in this room absolutely miss having the service flow on the screen with the hymns, with all of that? Is that really who here? So if that's very important to you, can you just raise your hand? I just need to get a feel for how I need.
It's also important for the online people as well.
Right, okay.
But there's only, careful, there's how many, 4 or 5 people who view the service online?
Seems to be the same number every time. Yeah.
What?
We
It
had
seems to be the
7
same number
today.
every time.
That's
We have how
live.
many tonight?
Right, no, that's live, but even people watch it afterwards, to your point, Carol,
Okay,
yeah, people
okay.
watch it afterwards too. Yeah, live it is. So
Yeah.
here's the reason I'm asking. It is it's a worship, leadership kind of thing to take on PowerPoint with a screen. The problem is, you guys, because we're doing both bulletin and PowerPoint, it's making double work for myself and whoever's. There's a lot that goes into that. I don't need to explain that right now. Just know that this is what I've learned. We're doing 2 things, and it's taking energy away from something else.
Right.
So if we choose to focus on PowerPoint and screen and worship, then we do that, but then our energy then needs to go towards ensuring that we have the proper sound people who can run the computer, who can set the computer up, who can click, you know, and follow the service, because if we don't have bulletins, then, you know what I mean? There's a whole series of then energy gets poured into that. We most likely would need to get another screen up. We need a monitor for the choir so the choir can see what's going on, like Spirit of Truth has. Or Spirit of Truth has got this down, you guys. We could learn from them, P.S. If we decide to go that route. Or I say we have to maybe shift away from screen and just go
As we
bulletin
have
again.
been doing last.
Right, and I've done that strategically because I wanted to see if there was a huge gap and outcry. But here's the reason I'm bringing it up. Like I said, we're doing double work, and I don't think it's the greatest use of our time. I think we have to poop or get off the pot.
Right. Unless somebody wanted to do it, I mean, please understand, anybody who's listening, the hymns are in a file, so it's not typing in the words,
It's not just
cut
the
and
PowerPoint,
paste.
it's like
It's
how
not,
the information,
somebody
who
doing
gets the information, why they get the information.
Right.
Because if I'm doing worship, it's just if you're really curious, talk to me afterwards. I'll explain the process for why it's extra energy. I don't want to take more time up in this.
Who's been clicking through it in the past?
The person doing the sound.
The sound person.
Sometimes you use it.
And
Well, with my sermons, I'll use
And
it.
Sue Ann, apparently it took, because she got good at it, took her 2 to 3 hours, is what she said.
Yeah, 2 to 3 hours
Every week.
every week.
Right.
But it's the communication flow of then what do you do with the PowerPoint? Where does it go? Who does it go to? Who sets up the computer on Sunday morning? And here's where I'm going to say, you guys, Pastor Amanda has been doing a lot of tech work. I don't want to do tech work anymore. I want to be with you. On Sunday morning, I want to be present with you and sit down and have coffee and drink coffee with you. I don't want to be running around Sunday morning dealing with tech stuff.
And we don't want you to.
Right. So that's all I'm saying is those things that all need a process and a flow. And I was just curious as to what is the temperature in the congregation around the use of screens and digital worship that way. It has, listen, both of them, if we make the choice, let's be clear why we're making that choice. If we're going digital, it's because we're trying to build our online viewership. We want that to be accessible for people who don't like bulletins. They just want to be able to not have anything in their hands and just be free to be present.
Isn't that part of
Different
what we're
generation.
doing, hiring someone for our new mission?
Yeah.
So do we really need to resolve that at this?
No, it doesn't need to be resolved. I just needed to know the temperature of the room. Is this super important for you now, or can we just wait till maybe some of this and we just don't have it for a while on the screen?
It sounds like the minister would really prefer that we wait.
Whatever.
It matters to us what the minister prefers.
I'm just telling you why it matters to me is because it's taking me away from you, and that is really has been problematic for me. So
I think the point of the bulletin, as much as it is to tell us what's in the service, the announcements part of the bulletin is something you take home and you go, oh, March 15th, we're going to have an evening Ash Wednesday, whatever that is, whatever day. You know, we're going to have an evening service. I got to put it in my calendar. You know what I mean? So that little funny little half page or page is actually very important. You know, that people get that.
because there's somebody here in this room, I'm not going to say who it is, but there's somebody here in this room who's willing to take on doing the PowerPoint, but that doesn't solve the primary flow of Sunday morning. There's nobody then to set up the computer to take the PowerPoint off of a cloud and bring it down and get the projector set up and get that has to be solved too. So just know that if we want to solve this short term, we have somebody who's willing to step into Sue Ann's shoes here and say, I'll take this on as a ministry.
Oh, I think with that, it's much more doable, but maybe a conversation to continue at our board meeting. If somebody's willing to do the setup, maybe as we did with the summer services, maybe the solution of getting somebody to do the setup Sunday morning is a joint thing among a couple of people and can be done.
Yeah.
So let's maybe
but I'm
table
hearing
that.
right now, without the screen, nobody's having a huge panic about that.
I was on today. I didn't feel watched.
All right. Then, thank you. I just needed that quick input. Thank you so much. We're going to hold ourselves in hope and close this time together in hope. This is a prayer / poem by Teresa I. Soto. And it's called Meditations on Hope and Resilience, Spilling the Light. And I love that imagery. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath, the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star, and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to hold the world of which we dream, and by covenant and the movement forward of one right action in the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home.
Very good. So, again, reminder, next week, brief meeting in here, bring your papers, that's your assignment. Extra copies are on you. There's extra copies up there if you need them.
Any copies, ma'am?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. I got some yesterday.
Good work.